So I'm gonna introduce you to something that where are we at? That some of you who are working in very highly regulated industries are probably very familiar with, and others maybe something that is less close at hand, but nonetheless very important, which is when you've built a AI-enabled product, a model, something that is going to be making decisions on behalf of the organization that you work for. The model itself is going to be subject to a huge number of compliance requirements. If you are working in banking, for example, it'll have to go through the model risk management process. There's separate teams of validators, risk management professionals, audit, compliance departments, etc., that end up looking at your model and very often um, very impressive projects that people have worked on with a great deal of effort and cost come to a halt because they're not seen to have passed particular requirements. So in the worst cases, we've worked with some banks where they'll have about 70 different reports that they have to put together, and they have to then be approved on all 70 of them. This is an extreme case, but it's one that is increasingly important as people become more and more aware of the risks around artificial intelligence. And this is something that we've been building as a company in a number of different verticals. Financial services, we have worked with British Standards Institute to bring this into healthcare. And as more and more large industries are adopting artificial intelligence, we are seeing a very big push to start to get a handle on managing those risks. And this is pressure that in some cases comes from people's fear of AI from the movies. Looking back to the 50s, we had 2001: A Space Odyssey, which to my mind put AI on the radar of a lot of people. The ship that they're in is powered by HAL, a computer, and HAL ends up finding that his opinion of how the mission should run differs from the people, and it'd be a lot more efficient just to get rid of the humans. This is, of course, the Terminator narrative. This is something that comes up in, say, the I, Robot movie. We see no end of this in popular culture, and it has taken over the popular imagination. And on top of that, of course, there's a great deal of fear around things like uh, process automation taking people's jobs away, having artificial intelligence systems that start to make decisions like denying people's loans. Recently, Cigna Health has a class action lawsuit against it for automatically denying healthcare claims without human oversight. And this is something that more and more will be a blocker for getting your artificial intelligence systems into production. So if we go back not so very long ago, the pre-generative era, let's say, the show Silicon Valley had a pretty awesome episode. I was building some tech at a company that I founded previously and sold, where we were analyzing social media, and ultimately we were saying this is harmful or not harmful on about 50 different categories. In this show, you have something very similar where someone detects whether something's a hot dog or not. And those of us who have worked in this space know that it will be probably be 1,000 pictures of hot dogs, 1,000 pictures of things that aren't hot dogs, and then run that through, say, a convolutional neural network with the labels, and then it learns very quickly what looks like a hot dog and what doesn't. And then you're able to assess this on the basis of standard metrics like accuracy, precision, recall, etc. And it's a relatively straightforward way of testing it, and you can generally get this kind of thing into production pretty quickly and easily. Generative AI now is causing us a great deal of complexity in how to vet these kinds of models. And in part, it's because they solve open-ended set of problems. It's not hot dog, not hot dog. It's does this look like a good picture of a person? Maybe that's reasonably set. But if we're looking at, say, stable diffusion, and you start to worry about how it's going to affect the customer if you were to use this. If you type in Melanie and draw a picture of Melanie, or you type in Peter, draw a picture of Peter, the AI seems to be very much sexualizing the female images and giving pictures of, white, middle-aged or above men. And this is something that's completely unacceptable in most contexts of use. So this is the kind of thing that pops up, and it can pop up all over the place. This is something might refer to as the Swiss cheese problem, where you can have a very narrowly defined range of outcomes and test for it and get very high accuracy. But if you go outside of that, suddenly all kinds of performance issues pop up. And this is more and more the problem, not coming up with the great new algorithm. Those algorithms all come, we now have pre-trained models. I mean, you don't even have to build a model in many cases. But the main problems is actually figuring out how to constrain its use, where it's appropriate to use, how to test it, and how to get it past compliance. So what the situation is becoming is things like figuring out what is an unacceptable output, and then starting to do tests, starting to do error handling, starting to identify those issues, and defining at the beginning what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior from one of these models. So the complexity is moving more and more towards the side of keeping track of things that are more or less compliance related, things that a model has to get past. And if you're building models and you don't have a handle on that, your project is going to fail. It's doomed. And this is something, well, Stanley Kubrick from 2001, the way he made his amazing science fiction movie in the 50s that looked as good or better than a lot of sci-fi movies that have come out, even up to modern days, because he was handling every single detail. He created a room, a control center, that had 3 people working in it 24 hours a day with file folders and numbers, keeping track of every tiny little bit of detail. That's the kind of thing that gets a high quality product out. So what we've offered our customers and built with some very, very incredible design partners, um, including major banks, standards institutes, and major consulting firms. We have something that now is in a place that you can keep track of all of your compliance requirements in one place. And if you're, say, looking at something that's not going to be highly monitored, say like an IT support chatbot, um, in this case, you would be able to apply some policies if you're on the product side, if you're on a compliance or risk side as well. Um, Sign into the platform and then just look through the various sectors that you operate in, figure out what is needed, and add those. So here, let's say we want to add a language model policy. We fill out a little bit of information about the model. Let's say this one's not a third-party model, and then we can apply the policy. And in one spot, the team now knows all of the different requirements. Instead of having emails from 50 different people with all kinds of different forms asking the same questions, everything is in one place. And if you take ownership over this, this allows you to be able to be building the models from the start with kinds of requirements already set and then building towards that. So there's going to be some form filling type work. That's always inevitable, but having it all in one place, you don't have to answer the same question twice. And for low risk models, very often you can just leave it at that. Now, if we're going to go and take a look at a slightly more high risk model, we have integrated testing components that allow you to do things like apply the ISO technical report 24027 for fairness and bias, and other ISO standards, and a whole host of ones that we've partnered with. And in this case, it is about tracking performance scores and having those against well-defined test requirements. So in this case, the system knows what is a good or a bad precision score. We're below that threshold. If you build your model with, say, more data, or figure out how to optimize the algorithm to get above the threshold, then you're able to integrate it into the system. We are in Azure Marketplace, so you can deploy this with a click. We integrate into the services there, as well as through a standalone SDK, Python library, and so on. So the end result is everyone gets to work in the same place to decide on what actually is important, build your models, and then by the time we're ready to go, you have the reports generated. You can have the small executive reports as well as the detailed reports in there. So I'll leave it at that. The guardrails around artificial intelligence protecting people who are subjected to the decisions that are being made by it are incredibly important. It's what's going to get you past the folks within a company responsible at the end of the day for any of the liabilities that come with putting out probabilistic systems. And it's important to build them up. There's a lot of work to be done. We are working with a group of partners and having a larger ecosystem of people working on responsible artificial intelligence that is giving comfort to those who are bearing the risks, is incredibly important. So I'll leave it at that. If you want to check out, we have a large language model policy. Go to fairly.ai if you'd like to learn more.